Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video on full spectrum attrition. Can the US/West recover from its failures? From its failures in climate, in economic inequality, industry, science, and tech innovation. The R word, not the R, sorry, but the other one that I can't say right now, and other failures, other problems. So obviously, this is a picture of Hurricane Helene that has been wreaking a lot of havoc all over the North American continent. There's actually two simultaneous hurricanes hitting the Americas right now, and but yeah, this is a Category 4. It's pretty big. I mean, in terms of the width, because the hurricane categories, I teach science, tech, engineering, and math, and I taught a lot of hurricane classes, hurricane preparedness to like K to 12 students. It's one of my science, tech, engineering, math teacher curriculums that I have is specifically like Hurricane Preparedness Day. Um, and one of the things we learned is that the hurricane categories are based on the wind speed, the sustained average wind speeds in the area surrounding the eye wall of the hurricane. And so, the Category 4 hurricane just means you have like 140, or I think it's around 140, I forget the exact categories, but 140 miles per hour winds, which is, that is well over twice the average speed limit in most highways. That will rip houses down. That will blow. It has been snapping oak trees in half and landing trees on homes, which has already reportedly killed some people. The and so this the wind speed is like the number one. Well, that's the method of judging the category, but the size of this hurricane is actually it's like really massive in terms of like the total width and height, the latitude, the latitudinal diameter, and longitudinal breadth is just massive. It's like it. I remember when the hurricane was starting, like we already had friends. Like the hurricane south of Florida was just getting started, and we hadn't even come close to Florida yet. And we had friends and Discord peeps in the Carolinas, all the way up to like I want to say like New York area. Forget where every single one of them are, but they're all talking about all the power is already going down, or there's already flooding, or they couldn't get access to the internet because of the hurricane. And it was like hadn't even come within. It hadn't even gotten within like 2,000 miles of them. So the hurricane itself is part of like a larger system of super a lot of excess extreme levels of moisture and water vapor that's just drenching, and also of course gusting and causing large amounts of destruction across the entire or huge parts of the US certainly. um and if you are somebody that's suffering that's really horrible. you know uh that is a terrible thing to happen to everybody, to anyone. Nobody wishes this on anybody. If you are having your house flooded, your cars washed down the street in a tidal wave, or in a storm surge, if you are having trees, you know, ramming their ways through your house and then obviously killing people, this is terrible. And I hope that people can get help as soon as possible from the emergency and other services. Um, that they need. Although a lot of people that we know are still. Our daughter actually has a friend that's in the East Coast who has like a regular like a Minecraft, Minecraft, play together, hangout time, and that could not happen because of this, obviously. The time it started was way before the hurricane even got there. So that's a whole that's another data point that I'll have to talk about later, which is that why did the power go out, right? Because part of it is, it's a big hurricane, it's a big cyclone, it's a big storm, it's a big typhoon, depending on what part of the earth you're from that you're describing this meteorological phenomenon. But one thing is that actually the power shouldn't really have gone out in a lot of places that it was, right? Yes, it is a big hurricane, but like power was going out not just because there was a huge natural disaster, but because of other human and economically and general systemic failures of the United States, right? The way that power shouldn't go out. For example, like, in the California wildfires, like many years ago, power went out to millions of people in California as the PG&E corporation, right? The power company. Sorry, 1 second here. What's up, Scuba Duck? I hope that your snorkels are properly fitting over your bill. I'm just kidding. I don't know if you scuba and you're also related to Donald Duck, but if you do, then I hope that all of your aquatic gear fits properly. Anyways, if you're in the hurricane, I really hope it does, because you're gonna need it. Anyway, bad joke probably, but with PG&E, right? There was this disaster. Let me just open that up real fast. Because of their catastrophic mismanagement. Well, let me rewind a little bit. PG&E basically allowed the electrical grid, right? The wires, the copper, the towers, these power stations, the grid, right? All of the infrastructure costs money, right? To pay workers, to pay for the steel, to maintain electrical grids, right? It's expensive, but however, if you want to have infrastructure, right? If you want to have a functioning society, right? And you want to, and also if you want people to not die and suffer, you need to spend that money and spend those resources to maintain the electrical grid, right? So the flames burning near power lines in Sycamore Canyon near West Mountain Drive. The Pacific Gas and Electric Corporation is facing upwards of this is from not right now. This is from some time ago. $30 billion in liabilities for its alleged fall in dozens of wildfires between 2017 and 2018, including November's Camp Fire, the single most destructive wildfire in California's history. But anyways, so the main point is that because of the failures, and why did that happen, right? Why did the power go out, right? People died because, well, the wildfires are deadly, right? But the wildfires, they're dangerous, obviously, right? They spread at 30, 40, 50 miles per hour. As a native Hawaiian in Hawaii, I know this because members of our community died and were displaced by the Lahaina fires. Also a failure of the U.S. and its economic system and its corruption and mismanagement and etc. But because it costs money, right? Because it costs money to update these the lines, the high power meters, like just to check, right, and just to have people monitor, like where is the fire, and or like just to monitor what condition. You have to have people. You have to have people going out regularly, checking these lines, and you have to be updating them. I mean, it's like water mains, right? Like Flint, Michigan's pipes, right? Like Philadelphia, like half of Pennsylvania has like orange, or like the water comes out smelling like liquid Drano, dog feces, and like random meth lab components put in a blender, spun up, right? That's what a lot of people's water in the U.S. smells like and comes out tasting like, especially if you're in a marginalized community like Flint, Michigan, a predominantly black community, like many Native communities, and et cetera, et cetera. And so, but even if you're not, if you're poor, and even sometimes if you're not poor, even if you're in whatever remains, what shreds of suburbia remains of the middle class, you could still have, right? It's not really that the U.S. has actively blown up its own pipes, or actively, it's not actively cutting down its power lines, or like, attacking people in that way. It's simply that it costs money to maintain water pipes, water mains, sewer systems, roads, electrical lines, right? Even internet, to maintain that system, because a lot of people's internet went down as well. All that costs money. And in the PG&E wildfires, many people died because they couldn't get, when the fire happened, it put strained a lot of the grid in ways that it couldn't manage. The power company couldn't manage. They shut power off to millions of people, and they had this cascading domino effect, right? So because the fire happened, it caused, I forget exactly the reason, but it caused a strain on the power grid. Because they had not maintained the electrical system properly, they were forced to shut off. So part of the reason why people lost power is because of the lack of maintenance. Because if it had been better maintained, they could have kept the power on more. Because the power went off, this is like the third domino, was that people couldn't get messages to their phones. People couldn't get they lost communications. Because they lost communications, when it was time to flee the fire, people didn't get the message until like the fire was basically on them, and then a lot of people died because of that. People were died, injured, didn't have time to get their belongings out. So it was what that meant. So that knock-on impact of failures. Now, obviously, the corporate greed, systemic, metastasized greed, that was what is managing these systems, right? In the privatized, for-profit PG&E, like everything else in the United States, is why they did not want to pay for these things, right? And then so it's kind of these problems are building up. Quarterly fiscal quarter graphs are going up. Look at all the money we're making, right? The line is going up, blah blah blah. But then the ticking time bombs, right? These eventualities, these eventual disasters, right? They're like being set. It's the same as the subprime 0809 financial crisis was just a similar thing, but in a financial economic banking loan mortgage sense, right? It was a buildup of years of these problems. The profit takers, right, that run the United States and the collective West are just, right, running away with all these gains. They know that there's all of this building up toxic waste. There's all of this disaster, like all this termite eaten infrastructure waiting to cause calamity, right? People dying, people losing everything, unnecessary, unknowable domino effect, kind of like second, third, fourth order impact damage. But it kind of all happens. It often all spirals out at once during a wildfire, during a hurricane, right? Remember in Texas, Remember in Texas, there were, several years ago, this happened as well. A U.S. Army veteran, yeah, let's not use generative AI is another cyber disaster waiting to happen, or really in transit happening. But residents in Texas received bills of more than $16,000 in the aftermath of the Texas disaster. Remember, there's that super cool troposphere air that shot down in this unprecedented ice storm in Texas, among other places. Again, it was like a U.S. spanning disaster, but a Texas High Court energy companies first fight colossal bills from winter storm. Again, and this is from this year actually, so this is still playing out in court. And of course in court, who like it's also moneycratic or plutocratic in courts, because whoever has the most money for lawyers, legal fees, essentially weaponized Judge Judy. Right. It's not really fair there either, because if you have the money for lawyers, I mean, if you know this, if you ever had to go up against large corporate entities, it can be very difficult to win anything, right? And ultimately, that's not really even that is not a solution, right? The electrical lines are not going to be fixed if enough individuals individually, or even in like 1,000 or even 1 million, sue these companies. That doesn't deal with the root problems that underlie these things. But anyways, this is another one of these disasters where the winter storm caused electric companies. Let me get to the important part here. It left more than 200 people dead from hypothermia in Texas and other health complications, and caused an estimated $295 billion in damage, according to the University of Houston. But Mother Nature was not solely responsible for even. Okay, now this is like, what is this? Courthouse News. This is some American corporate media site. Even they have to admit it's not just Mother Nature, right? There's a lot of fight right now on Twitter and on other social media spaces, mainstream media spaces, and other discursive arenas about, is it climate change? Is climate change to blame? Is it the not climate? Climate doesn't matter. Is it just a normal everyday accident? This is just normal risks that sometimes happen. Disasters happen. SHIT happens, right? And we just gotta accept that, and everything's fine, right? But there's like obviously that's happened. That always happens when these disasters happen, right? Or maybe there's too much greener environmentalists that made us vulnerable because we didn't use enough fossil fuel, something, right? But even this corporate media outlet is saying that it's not just Mother Nature that was responsible for this disaster. It was in fact power plant operators and natural gas suppliers' lack of preparation for the storm's frigid temperatures. And then plants went offline as demand soared, with millions of Texans cranking up their home heaters. To prevent a power grid failure that could have caused a complete blackout across the state, Electric Reliability Council of Texas, the state's grid operator, implemented rolling blackouts in the early morning. Later that day, Public Utility Commission ordered ERCOT to set the wholesale price of electricity at maximum $9,000 per kilowatt hour. The commission decided ERCOT's pricing algorithm had a glitch because the wholesale price at the time was averaging $2,400 per kilowatt hour during blackouts or load sheds. The algorithm was supposed to be setting it at max price. So what we have here is also, this is another thing. I think it was a U.S. veteran, like a 70-year-old U.S. veteran, was charged $16,000 for electricity after the storm because of this. Like, it's basically algorithmic pocket picking. It's like it's high speed. It's what I said I was going to do, right? High speed, high frequency mass theft using computers and semiconductors and NVIDIA chips, through like Byzantine C++ code, that ends up, what it results in is that like during these disasters, they can justify, they'll just like suddenly change the price of electricity. So now you're, instead of paying, you know, $100, $200, $300 for your month, you're paying $16,000 that month, right? This is like, you know, and like they're even doing this in stores now, right? Where they're like, when you go to Target, based on your like the distance between your zygomatic bones, your cheekbones, your eyebrow ridge, you know, your nose shape, right? It's like real time racialized surge pricing, where if the wider your nose is and the darker your skin is, like the price can either drop or raise. If you appear to be wealthier, you might have to pay more. If your face looks like a male or female, according to like that algorithm, it will charge you more or less. So it's just kind of like surge pricing to get as much money out of people as possible. And even like when you pick up like a can of pork and beans or a Prada bag, or you know, your Weetabix or your Splenda, you know, or your K-pop branded, you know, corn pop cereal, because there's a lot of K-pop bands on the cereal boxes nowadays, you know. And but it's like, oh, it's only $4 to get, you know, Hyunjin. I know who that is. It's only $10 to get. It's only $6 to get this BTS, you know, king sized Fruit Loops. Amazing. When you get to the checkout, it's like $20. Right? At that point, you're already, or it can change, right? And then it's like, oh my gosh, what the heck? I don't want to pay $20, even if it does have K-pop star BTS, who also had a cameo in the Megan Thee Stallion video as a anime character. I'm not gonna pay. I love that I love that K-pop star, but I'm gonna pay $20 for that, right? So the surge pricing, what you know, but once you're in line, right, you're already at the register. There's people behind you. You don't want to take all your stuff out, go all the way back to the aisle where you got that cereal, put it back, you know, like, right? And what if you put it back and then it's something, you get another product and then that changes price later. So what this does is it justifies, part of it is to, you know, nickel and dime people for as much profit as possible under, obviously, capitally, a not very good economic system, a kind of bad system where people with the most money and people who are the most greedy run everything and try to make more money and then make more money making more money. But and so what that does is that means that, like, it just at the end of the day means that even if like the algorithm goes wrong, it can give the corporation a plausibly deniable way to just wrench more money out of people's pockets, right? Another thing is like they call stealth downsizing, or like stealth quantity stealth, like ounce reduction. So they'll like have like cans that they look like the old can, but instead of like 16 ounces of, you know, Rockstar, Silver Ice, or Rain Lilycoy energy drink, or Mountain Dew Cold Red, instead of 16 ounces, it's 14 or 13 or something smaller, but it looks the same. So what that is that's the people who work in the US and the West, their job, right, who have gainful employment, like making six figures, their job is not really to produce anything. The job is to figure out and basically be conniving, gaslighting liars and cheaters, and figure out ways. They sit around in like corporate offices and think about ways to rip people off more. That's actually not normal. That shouldn't be what millions of people do. But that's what the people who have like the best jobs, right? And obviously in politics, they just think of ways to trick young people into trick young and old people into voting for a candidate that's not going to do anything for you in the plutocracy, right? Or that calls itself a democracy. But either whether you work in the political arenas as a campaign advisor, a marketer, which is all about tricking people into wasting their money and taking more money from them, figuring out algorithmic corporate ways to algorithmic techno stealing, techno thievery, right? By jacking the price up magically when you get to the checkout, or any of these ways, the job of the gainfully, which means the people who have a quote unquote dignified wage that they can afford their housing, their car, their basic needs, they're doing like some of these horrible activities. I mean, that entire system, that's not a normal situation. Like there are countries in the world right now that don't have the majority of actually like well-paid people absolutely trying to maximizing greed and hurting people for their own benefit, right? But all of that together, right? That's what is causing obviously this disaster where people died, froze to death in their homes because like their water pipes exploded because the Texas, again, this domino effect, the Texas company, which has a giant BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. I think it was like J.P. Morgan was involved in this one at that time. It was like before the 2020s when this, it's the same kind of entity. It's just the nuclear reactor cores of capitalism, that is the banking entities, right? They're constantly evolving and shifting in dark eldritch ways. But anyway, long story short, they, all of this is profiting Wall Street. They have like collateralized electric company default swaps and all kind of horrible instruments, and all of this, the grids of Texas, the grids of all the United States, West Coast, East Coast. I think the U.S. is broken into like 3 separate subdivisions. Like there's the West Coast power grid, East Coast, and like Texas has its own, or it did, but they're all owned by some huge financial entity in New York, or they profit. And so it was not profitable to, again, maintain the electrical grid, to maintain the power system, to upgrade the rusting apart high power lines, right? So then when the disaster happened, they're like, we have to shut the power off because we can't handle this load. People died. People froze to death in their homes. Billions and billions of dollars of damage happened. People were charged $16,000 surge pricing for their bill that month, which is just absolute nonsense. Again, the court system, though, can be bought by money, which makes more money than can buy the courts, the executive and legislative branches of government to get what they want to happen, hurting people more. Obviously the poop rolls down the hill like so much Category 4 hurricane dropped water causing a lahar mudslide in North Carolina, and just all that poop water overflowing from the broken sewers mixing with the down power lines just flows downhill and lands on the poorest and most marginalized people as it does. But everybody is getting poorer and more marginalized in various ways in the US and the collective West. So anyway, let's move on from that though. Yeah, and so what's happening with the hurricane now is a knock on of that. What's happening with Hurricane Helene? Let me see if I can get some of the latest updates on that. We don't know all the damage yet, right? But what we do know is that there's huge, mega flooding, unprecedented inches of rainfall that is like Noah's Ark scale in many places. Like there are like areas where like the houses are just floating away in where they had never really had that before. Let's see here. So bring up to surge and high winds across state's Gulf Coast. The storm has been blamed for at least 40 deaths. I've seen more than that. It's like over 50 at this point. We won't know for a while exactly how many people have died. And we get into a tropical depression over Carolinas with maximum sustained winds of 30 miles per hour by early afternoon. National Hurricane Center said the storm will continue to weaken. Okay, so yeah, so evacuations are underway. Simultaneously, there's another hurricane happening. Hurricane Idalia came ashore on the West Coast. Hurricane. Okay, I think I'm messing that up. Okay, because Western North Carolina. I'm sorry, but there is actually another hurricane that's happening in the West Coast. It's actually I hit Mexico, I think, recently. The Haywood County Sheriff's Office said it was helping the evacuations in Crusoe, Clyde, Canton, and lower lying parts of Waynesville. But there's been a lot of like really disastrous events already. Let me just see if I think I bookmarked some of them. Let me see if I can find that really fast. That's not a hurricane. Yeah. So this is a scene where thank goodness that we jailed those two who threw soup over a completely covered painting for 2 years. Yeah, so and a lot of people who were climate activists, right? Many people set themselves on fire. Chained themselves to energy company, bank, and corporate headquarters, like threw blood over covered paintings. And this is some of the scenes in the East Coast of the U.S. I mean that is not good. You have entire areas that are just completely underwater. There's like a whirlpool happening. There's a Scylla Charybdis effect happening over there. So I mean, everywhere that you see that's getting hit, we have to remember like the infrastructure just in general, like the homes, the houses, and not just the infrastructure, right? That's being destroyed. People's reserves, right? If a disaster happens, right? There's that statistic, right? That what was it? Let me see if I can find that exact statistic. It's like 37. I think it's more than that now. 63% of adults in 2022 said, with hypothetical, 2 in 3 Americans couldn't cover $400 emergency. Okay, so economically, because not just in terms of like the physical infrastructure, like we talked about, the pipes, water pipes, sewer, general infrastructure, city roads, electrical, internet grids, right? All this stuff that costs money to maintain, transportation, right? Buses, cars, everything, right? The electrical plant, the water treatment plant itself, the water, the water supply, the water testing location, all this stuff has to be maintained. 2 in 3 Americans couldn't cover $400 emergency, and this was last year. Recessionary behavior already here. Okay, so anyways, I just wanted the numbers. So, but also economically, right? People have been tapped out in the U.S. for a while, obviously, right? Because this is not like really new. It was, I think, at least 50%, or it was like maybe like in 20 teens, 2 and 3 people couldn't cover like $1,000 bill, but now it's like 400. I mean, either way, whatever it is exactly, it's not good, and it's only gotten worse, right? So the number of people who have the money, right? The number of people who have the money to actually cover when their house gets flooded, right? Because there's moving costs. If even if just like the hurricane smashed a window, right? Smashed out a window, like broke a wall, right? The price of wood has gone up by like multiple times since the 20 teens as well in a lot of places. Like lumber costs, like the 2x4s. I remember it used to be like two. My dad was even saying, because my dad likes to buy wood and do construction projects and carpentry, and he was saying like I remember the 2x4s being like $2, like a 6 foot, 2 inches, right, by 4 inches piece of pine. It's like it was like it was affordable. I forget it was exactly $2, $3, $4. And he's like, all of a sudden, these 2x4, like just a plank of wood, of cheap pine wood, not like expensive mahogany. This is not like, the ebony that goes into like BC Rich Warlock guitars, which I have, in fact. Small humble brag there, although it's somewhere in a closet, hopefully not getting hit by a hurricane or a Lahaina wildfire. Anyways, the wood went to like $8, $8 or more. Right, so that's like it over double, triple. So if you have a hurricane, and you have hurricane damage, it's going to cost money to repair that. And people who are already low, their savings, their 401k, they've already tapped into their retirements, whatever money they've stuck under the mattress or, kept in, leprechaun gold coins and stuck inside of the nearby oak tree. Oh my God, the oak tree snapped in half. All of my gold was in that, and now it went down the drain. Along with all of what remains of our functioning water mains. My gold coins went down our broken water mains and then got washed out into the Pacific Ocean, along with those nuclear reactors that have also spilled into our ocean. And then now we can't fish in the East Coast because all the water from Maine to Florida is contaminated as Fukushima nuclear isotope filled bays and reefs. I'm not saying that's what happened, but that's another series of knock-on impacts from all of these set ticking time bomb. All of this set hidden, disguised. They call them risks on the balance sheet. It's red in your Excel. It's the red ink in your Excel spreadsheet. But you can hide that stuff, right? In the 0809 financial crisis, they call it Mark II model, where you mark the value of your corporation, your bank, your zombie corporation, your zombie bank, your zombie government, your zombie civilization, and you say, oh well, this mortgage that you made to a waitress. This would regularly happen in the run up to the 0809 financial crisis. This mortgage that I have it's for a $2 million house, right, in Florida or in California or in New York or wherever, right? They used to call them ninja loans, right? No income, no jobs, no assets. So what they do is they would make loans to people who had no income, they have no cash flow, they had no job, right? And they had no assets, meaning that they have no car, they have no house, no property to their name, no diamonds, no jewels, no CD. They have no motorbike. They have no BC rich ebony fretboarded electric guitars to sell and pawn off in the event of financial calamity, right? So, and I know this because I almost was a high frequency trading algorithm programmer for Goldman Sachs, and thank God I didn't do that. Because that's absolutely immoral, but that's how the West functions. So, so you would still make that loan. You would, as the mortgage originator, right? The job was called a loan officer, right? You would take the loan, right? You make the loan that was completely fraudulent, right? It's not going to be paid back because somebody with no income, no jobs, no assets, how are they going to pay back $2 million? How are they going to pay back the $8,000 a month plus interest monthly mortgage payment, right? Oh, well, what we'll do is we'll have what's called like no money down, because obviously they don't have any money. How are they going to put money down? We have no money down, zero interest, right? And they'll have like the adjustable rate mortgage, and we'll have like no payments for the first year, 2-3 years, right? So it's basically like delayed payments. All of that was like terms. And this, you can watch a movie about this complex financial wizardry in this movie called Big Short. But what was all of that? That's about doing the same thing, right? That PG&E was doing, right? It's the same thing that the people that run the insurance scams and run the electrical grids and water grids in North Carolina under this hurricane have been doing, right? Which is, we're gonna find out how, like, catastrophic additional knock-on domino damage, right, in the coming days because of all of the already hidden frauds, right, and this criminality that benefits the capitalists and the wealthiest who own shares in private corporations, right, and privatize real estate, privatize private banks, blah, 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 right? But so anyway, so you make this loan, you know that, oh, it's not going to work. You know that it's not going to work out, right? 2-3 years from now. all of the bankers and all this, oh, we had no idea. How could we know that there was going to be a financial crisis in 08 or 09? There'd be a global conflagration. There would be freeze of the liquidity markets. Could be a run on banks. Banks can't lend to each other. The entire economy would freeze. Millions would lose jobs. There'd be huge economic downturn, poverty, suffering, 40,000 deaths in the United States just from poverty alone. Or it's unclear exactly how many, but there's a number of people drank themselves to death, simply couldn't afford medication and died because of this. Thousands, at least tens of thousands, probably millions globally. They knew it was going to happen because they originated the mortgages. They had the addresses, they had the fact that, Mark Brown, or Shirley White in Florida, she was Mark was a janitor at a Jiffy Lube, and Shirley was a McDonald's clerk, and she was making $7.25 an hour. She had no money to her name. They knew how much money she was making. They knew how much he was making. In some cases, they made loans to dead people. Like, it was like Bruce Willis, M. Night Shyamalan, 6 Sense loans. Okay, we just saw Trap, right? Which is what they do to you. They trap you into this situation. So these huge banks would originate loans to people who had social security numbers but had already passed away. But that didn't matter, right? Because the people originating the loans at the local banks, right? Like first in Hawaii, First Hawaiian Bank. In Florida, the Miami, National Patriotic Bank of the People's Republic of DeSantis. I mean, it doesn't matter what. It's just like the local bank, the Californian local bank. And you have the local bank originate that loan. They would send that loan up to the regional banks, which would repackage that into collateralized debt obligations. It's basically just like groups of like hundreds or thousands of home mortgages. They would then take those, send them up to Wall Street. I mean, again, the same as what they do with electrical grids, right? The local electrical grids have their own management and local business heads. Then they repackage all of the electrical grids together into some huge financial instrument that is headquartered in Wall Street, owned by BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, one of these new Cthulhu-like planetary vampire squid that have succeeded the older vampire squid of like the Goldman Sachs mega hedge funds. Sam Altman is trying to get 7 trillion AI generated ChatGPT posts to pump all of his co-investments in electrical company and the Vanguard. They're all co-invested in each other. Bill Gates, Elon Musk, they're all co-invested. Anyway, so they're all really one system. Like the U.S. and Israel is one Siamese twin. U.S., Europe, Israel. It's all just the continuation of the Euro-colonial British and French that John Malkovich themselves into the United States. Anyways, The Big Short, so like they know the point of The Big Short is that like this is not just oops, because what they wanted to say in this 07, 08, 09 was like, oh, who knew this was going to happen? Right? It's kind of like the disaster, right? Oh, who knew that we're going to have billions of dollars of damage and people would die unnecessarily when we had power failures, right? And hospitals couldn't stay on. People died who are in the emergency rooms on pacemakers and some kind of equipment that could have been kept on, but because of the failure to maintain infrastructure, the damage from Hurricane Helene is worse, right? Just like the same thing as in the Texas super ice storm, right? That unnecessarily killed countless people, caused more damage than it would have, and was an excuse to massively price gouge for the capitalist profit electricity users, which is everybody, by tens of thousands of dollars, right? It was not the specific disaster of the ice storm, yes, was unknown. The specific Hurricane Helene, it's known that hurricanes were going to hit. Hurricanes have hit and will keep hitting. The exact specific time, date, location, and like category and trajectory, right? Exactly where Hurricane Helene would spiral and zigzag across the map of North America, that's unknown. But it's known that it's going to hit, right? Um, and but and so similarly in the 0809 financial crisis, right, which is there's a book called The Black Swan by a Lebanese. I heard Lebanon's in the news nowadays because of more Western failures uh, at being normal people with humanity. Success is from a Lord Elgin imperialist perspective, but the Lebanese author Nassim Talib wrote a book called The Black Swan, which and part of the point of The Black Swan, not the Tour de Force Darren Aronofsky movie. I'm talking about the book by Lebanese, possibly Hezbollah member. No, I'm just kidding. He's not. By the Lebanese author Nassim Taleb, he points out that the Wall Street crash, Harry Potter, and Internet. This is before Rowling, by the way. Why are all forecasters con artists? What can Catherine the Great's lovers tell us about probability? And why should you never run for a train or read a newspaper? This book is all about black swans, the random events that underlie our lives, from bestsellers to world disasters. The impact is huge. They're impossible to predict. Yet, after they happen, we always try to rationalize them. And so a part of it, like the Black Swan event, is that part of this was like talking about like how people, like the unprecedentedness of disasters, right? And the unprecedentedness of 0809 financial crisis, right, is part of what enabled the crime, right? Because they had entire like economic departments, like the entire Western Harvard-led economics academic universe, right? It's basically like the cathedral of Larry Summers. It's the cathedral of Milton Friedman, that has all of these people that are gainfully employed, right? Like in the Holy Roman Catholic Empire, right? But they speak on high about the immutable, like the papacy, right? Speaking about the heliocentricity, right? The geocentricity, and Vatican at the center of the universe, and Vatican closest to God, blah 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 blah. And then Galileo shows up, and then they put him under house arrest for contradicting their metaphysical made-up theory. And so the economics departments are also like that, but they had these theories like the Gaussian copula curve, mean value theory, portfolio theory, the sigma 6 probability of black swan, extremely unlikely events. Basically, the meaning sigma 6 is just a fancy way to say vanishingly unlikely events that are like less than 1 in a million to happen, right? Like lightning striking you in the head 50 times in like 2 days. It's very, very unlikely. Unless your head is like, you're like Megamind and your head happens to be made of steel, or you have a magneto helmet and you fly into that one area of Central America where lightning strikes all day long every day. Unless you're that person, it's unlikely you'll be struck in the head 50 times by a lightning bolt. However, like, but they would say, oh, because we have these extremely complicated theorems and extremely complicated curves, like you average American, you can't even read like C-Spot Run. Like an average American can't read at a C-Spot Run is not 6. You can't even read Tuck Everlasting, right? The average American cannot read above a 6th grade level. You definitely dropped out of math when they started putting Greek and alphabet soup into the mathematics equations, right? You don't know anything about math, so you can't know anything about money. You can't know anything about economics. You are not qualified to operate business. You are not qualified to make decisions. But I, Larry Summers, what's his name? That clown that always writes at the New York Times. There's all of them, obviously. Larry Summers, random Harvard, Princeton, or Yale economist, Oxbridge or Cambridge, genius. I know how the monies works, and I am the high priest of the new cathedrals of the Holy American Empire, which is the Holy British and French Empire, which is the Holy Roman Empire. And I will tell you how it functions. And the way it functions is there will be no risk ever again. There's zero risk of ever having a financial collapse. There can never be a .com tech boom, a tech bubble burst. Because why? Because Ben Bernanke, who was the chair of the U.S. Federal Reserve, this is basically the bank of all the banks, the Uber bank, and he wrote a paper called "The Great Moderation," where there would never be a housing bubble burst. He wrote it like a year before the housing bubble burst, right? It was called "The Great Moderation," in which, because of all of these millions of people, again, this is the only gainful jobs that pay dignified, livable wages that you can like have a family with and like have a decent life with, is to basically do crime and like malice in the Western world, right? And economist is one of these kind of jobs. Economist, financial managers, asset manager, stock trader, hedge fund manager, accountant, basically like a professional supervillain crime doer with spreadsheets and complicated tax code, intentionally overcomplicated in order to, a lawyer, what they do is they're people who have degrees to have unnecessarily overcomplicated legalese that only they understand so that they can enable crimes of the wealthy and most powerful that run the collective West. Right, that's what a lawyer is, essentially. I think there's a movie, I forgot what that movie is, what they say. A legal degree is a license to do crime. I mean, it certainly is in the U.S. So, but anyways, but going back to The Economist. So, but the thing is, these black swan events that are like once, because the point of the black swan was that there was a time in which they thought there were only white swans, and they said there's no possible way that there could ever be a black swan. I think it was in Europe. They said there's no possible way there could be a black swan because we simply have not seen a black swan. We've only ever seen white swans. And then they discovered, like during the colonial era of planetary bloodletting and stealing everything from the world, from a small minority percentage of the world that's called Europe, they discovered black swans. And they said, oh, wow, I guess there are black swans. But you could not make a theory that would predict no theory, no science could and would tell you there was a black swan before they encountered the black swan, right? It's actually kind of but it's in that sense it's kind of a it's partial. The book itself has problems. It's partially hiding the fact that they did know. It wasn't really a black swan because the people who made the loans did know. It's true that like you would have unknown catastrophic events, right? And part of the book's point is that because you don't know when there will be a black swan, unknown, unprecedented event, right? Like if there was a gamma ray burst where, a quasar or a two super giant stars crash into each other and causes like basically like a multi-planet wide beam of supercharged particles to basically microwave our planet. That would be a black swan event because it's possible, but it's vanishingly unlikely. Nobody's really thinking or planning for that. Not really. Well, except maybe the Chinese. They plan for everything. But like a black swan, 0809 wasn't really a black swan because you could predict that it would happen. Not exactly when, right? Like this hurricane, you couldn't predict exactly what category, what day, what time a massive hurricane would wreck everything from Florida through Louisiana all the way up into North Carolina. But it would happen at some point, right? It would be vanishingly unlikely for no hurricane to make landfall in America for like 50 years. That would be super unlikely, right? As obviously climate change and global warming increase and the temperature gets higher, the air gets more watery and fills with H2O as the heat causes more of the ocean to turn into vapor, et cetera, et cetera. There's going to be more and more likely, right? You're going to have hurricanes. So anyways, but you know, but the other thing about the black swan is that like people need to prepare and have like robust systems so that when the disasters happen, like the 0809 financial crisis, you minimize the damage from the black swan events, right? So like I mean, obviously one of the things that was said was, I don't know if you even know this. There's children who have been born and they have become adults already, and they have never lived in a time when there was even the pretense that the United States financial system isn't a complete, absolute criminal enterprise. Now, it always has been, but they were pretending, right? Before the banks, before they gave unlimited trillions of dollars and 800 billion to TARP bailout and endless trillions to the richest, most powerful, most useless oxygen thieves, also known as the banking and corporate class and billionaires. There was infinite planetary heist that has never stopped since 0809. They just have printed more and more money and just dumped it into executives, pay packages, and hedge fund managers and billionaires' pockets, right? There's people who have, it's kind of weird to imagine, there's children who have been born and have now, like, mommy and daddy, or mommy and daddy have kissed them and they've gone to college. In their whole life, right, it's just been open, it's been an open, not secret, that the U.S. financial system is just a total criminal enterprise, right? It's just like they just print money and give it to Elon. They print money and give it to whoever they want, and they don't even pretend, like, because they stopped. Like there was a point where people like me, I'm like 41, right? We were like, are you gonna put the people who caused billions of people suffering, the collapse of this entire global economy, who obviously knowingly committed like the largest scale planetary fraud, like just the biggest planet-wide fraud ever in history, and it's a lot of it was headquarters straight in the United States, and it screwed Americans over. Are you going to do anything about that? And that was Occupy Wall Street era, and that's the part of what the protests were about. And the United States and its government, it said no, we're just going to keep giving them more money. And after that, it was like, okay, well, I mean, and it's kind of like, why have young people given up on America? I mean, well, if you're a millennial, you remember that. Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they might not even remember that. But like after that, it's like you gave up, you know. And all that the you know liberal and conservative boomers say is like, why aren't the kids voting for our guy? You know, that's done nothing like the last, you know, 10 infinite number of people that they voted for, right? It's this weird thing. A Democrat is somebody who sees a visually marginalized, suffering person, and then when the marginalized person says, "I'm having problems," they say, I'm fantasizing about Republicans killing you now," right? That's the Democratic Party. It's basically like, we're saving the world. But you know, it's like it was Obama that oversaw this, right? Now, obviously, Bush was in charge in the 0208, and then but it's been Democrats and Republicans back and forth this entire time, and every time it's gotten worse. So that's almost like I don't even want to waste time talking about party politics in the West is liberal stuff, and conservative stuff really it's pointless to waste time not making real changes, in my opinion, that are never going to come through these kind of nonsense so-called elections. I mean, it's like the 0809 financial crisis showed that it didn't matter who was in charge, right? That was like hope. There was hope and change, and everything was supposed to get better under this so-called historical election. It's always a historical election. They gotta get new email mass mailers, you know, because all I see every time I get a Democratic Party, Bernie, Obama, Clinton, liberal email, it's like the most historic election ever. The most historic, you know, it's like a black swan election. Like, this is an election unlike every other, except all the other ones that we said exactly the same thing. But that's evidence of the Democratic Party, right? They're not even managing their mass political fake democracy fraud properly, right? They got billions of dollars, right, from the corporate world, from big oil, from big military, all the usual suspects, right? And they don't even spend the billions to write new Democratic Party please give me money begging emails, right? They just rehash the same last one. Can you come up with something else other than like, this is the most historic election. I'm once again asking you for money to give to the same people that pay me all the money to steal everybody else's money. I mean, like that's the quality of the fraud and deception of the political. The conservatives just, they're actually not that as deceptive in many ways. They just say, well, we want to ruin the world, and the Democrats look, but they have to pretend. So the quality of the deception of the Democratic Party is like they care about people, to pretend like they care about people for money from their wealthier donors. They're not even putting any effort. It's like ChatGPT phoned in emails now. Like nobody buys that. I don't even feel slightly gaslit now because it's so bad. Anyway, so I only feel like I only feel like it's too bad that all of the Democratic class, because of their infinite brunchy champagne toasting unmasked, they've all had 6 rounds of COVID, and so they don't even have the brain functionality to write a new email. I just feel sad for their dead omeletified neurons from 65 repeat COVID infections. Omicron, Epsilon. They're going to run out of Greek alphabet letters soon to keep. That's why they changed to Parola, because there's so many new strains. Because people keep being reinfected, where you could have stopped COVID with 2 months of 80% of people wearing N95s. Could have been done. But because people want to escape reality and be paid money to go to brunch and bribe, try to gaslight and scream at young marginalized people, Chapel Roan, and poor young kids. It's just sad they can't even gaslight and beat up their own children well for money. That's another thing. That's part of why the United States, its democracy is not going to successfully deal with attrition either. Politically, right? We talk about a lot of the economic. But yeah, to finish up on that whole the financial crisis era, we're the part of the time bomb set in the 2000s, right, was the huge overproduction of these loans, like I was talking about, right? The overproduction of loans that would never be paid back in housing, but also in municipal, in like the loans made to city governments, like Cincinnati, even Manhattan. They call them Mooney bonds, where the banks would make these huge loans, and they say, like, here's a loan that you can use to fix your, to maintain your fire department, to fix potholes, right, to clean out your storm drains, which will help in flooding during a hurricane, to do all these, to do all the normal maintenance of cities. And so even cities, after the 2008 financial crisis, that's part of why infrastructure has not been as maintained, right? Because the city budgets that are supposed to maintain roads, bridges, buildings, fire, medical, facilities, all the things, parks, public bathrooms. I mean, a lot of cities don't want public bathrooms because, they want to keep property prices up by pretending like homeless people don't exist. But like all this public infrastructure has not been maintained, in part because of knock-on impacts from the 2009 financial crisis, right? And obviously, the neoliberal era, since the 80s, you've had like gutting of public budgets, firefight, again, all those same things I was just talking about. But it really accelerated in the 2009 era because of these municipal bonds. And then when those went belly up, then that caused bankruptcies in cities themselves, and so that caused more privatization of everything, right? There are private fire departments. The bus, recently, many school buses this year have suspended, like they're not gonna do school busing, right? the reason why they're not doing that is because the privatization, right? And all this is just to try to privatize as much as possible for profit. Um, the school bus system that's supposed to be run by the cities have actually been bought up by private for-profit corporations that own all these buses now, and they're like, we're not gonna drive you in the area that we're in. We also have this problem in Hawaii because Hawaii is a U.S. colonial occupation, but 53% of U.S. students get dropped by school buses. Trying to find that one. Try to find that. There's that school bus. Where is that one? Okay. It's definitely happening here. Yeah, 30. So like just this week, right? It's been months of school, right? It's now what, September 26th, right? It's been over a month it's been 2 months of school. Only now have kids in Hawaii finally got school bus, like 34 school bus routes, like thousands of kids had no school bus to get on. Why did that happen? Because the entire bus system was bought up by private entities to make money, right? It's the same thing as the PG&E not maintaining the electric, right? Same thing as making loans for houses that people can't afford, right? It's the same as not maintaining the streets, causing accidents, pile-ups, and when hurricanes happen, causing way more destruction than would have otherwise. So the school buses, right, were out because and they've only just been reinstated because the private corporation bus driver salaries. Now if the school buses are there, right? I mean, they have to be maintained. If they don't maintain, I mean, but they're maintained as little as possible as well because the private corporation is taking over. So and so that's part of why kids couldn't even get to school. I mean, we're not big fans of school. We actually homeschool here, but so thank Makua, thank Akua, thank Allah that we don't have to worry about our kids not getting to their educational classes on time because we do them, but many people did, and the reason why is because privatization of those school buses, of that public resource. Same thing happened even in the U.S. military. Did you know that there's an Australian corporation, like Rupert Murdoch's cousin subsidiary or something like that owns the military housing, right? And this was like years ago. This is a story like years ago. It's actually before even the Red Hill crisis in Hawaii, another catastrophic U.S. failure. The U.S. military housing is like owned by private corporations who don't maintain the military housing. So there were like rat infestations, like termite bug infestations everywhere, bed bugs everywhere, and children were like just like suffering and like dying in the military housing because this private Australian corporation was not I don't really like the U.S. military for many reasons that you probably might know, as Native Hawaiian under U.S. colonial capitalist occupation. But these U.S. military houses were not even maintained, simply so then the troops and their families were suffering because they they wanted to make more money not maintaining them because it costs money to maintain. So it's basically like this is basically it's like necro something they call it necro capitalism, or this is termite economics, where you basically just like just chew out whatever you can of the structure, right? Which hollows it out. Now, if you have termites, right, the termites will eat out a house, right? The termites will eat the wood in a house slowly. You won't notice any difference, right? But if the termites eat long enough, eventually something catastrophic could break, right? Like a beam falls off, a wall falls down, or something, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, but you would not see the damage, right? As termites like chew through wood, the paint will tend to kind of, you could have like a hollow thin shell of paint over this like Swiss cheese porous like wormhole through piece of wood, right? If you stick your finger into the hollow section, like this is a beautiful lime green shade of paint we have. and you stick your finger into the lime green wall, and you could just puncture a hole right through, right? And then once you once you test, right, the termite eats in plank, then you discover, oh, that's actually not solid wood. That is dangerous. That is an accident waiting to happen, right? And not just termites, there's many things that do that, but that's basically how the United States functions, which is that the rich, the Wall Street, the people that run, and all the people that are gainfully employed by their parasite tapeworm masters, their termite masters, they're paid to basically worm through the walls of the U.S. and Western economies and society and civilization, and basically like chew out and eat whatever they can, invisibly, without people noticing that their water supply, their electrical grid, their school buses, their roads, their healthcare system, health infrastructure, their food system, their fire department, their everything, right? The jobs they work at. I just saw like a doomering out IBM employee say like, what is even the point of IBM existing except for the executive to do corporate buybacks, pay himself money, and buy more yachts. So everything is a termite economy. It's the collapsing death spiral phase, but it's all happening kind of as quietly as possible as the entire Western world like destroys itself, or its ruling class eats the insides of its majority out, and as big uncontrolled events like hurricanes and wildfires, right, ice storms, a financial crisis is another one that will test, right? If there is a big financial crisis, a big enough crisis, this could cause a massive another domino effect event, like it's another quote unquote black swan that will cause the unpredictable black swan specific event, right, that will cause very much known impacts based upon the fragilization of the entire system, that has been hollowed out for profit. So and so that's part of when I talk about full spectrum attrition, that the attrition is in part, it is not really what is attrition, right? So like attrition is the action or process of gradually reducing the strength or effectiveness of someone or something through a sustained attack or pressure. So like the council is trying to wear down the opposition by attrition, right? Attrition is the slow like waves on a sea cliff, right? Slowly attrit the area of your $50 million Malibu house, right? Like all these wealthy yoga and ayahuasca consuming hippie / millionaires that gave up on the age of Aquarius, or they still go to Burning Man as they can overconsume resources on their private jets and burn the planet and talk about saving it. The people who have these huge houses on the cliffs, the action of the oceans, just repeated, in billions of years, ultimately, daily quadrillion chisel taps, just like whacking away at little bits of rock and sediment and earth and dirt, over time slowly will eat away at the cliff, and usually you don't see it, and then all of a sudden there's a landslide, and then your house is gone, right? And people don't really care because we don't care about rich people who have stolen everything from everywhere else anyway, right? It's kind of like watching billionaires take a Ocean's Gate submarine to the bottom of the ocean floor, or watching the golfing Elon wannabes on their yachts get attacked by orcas. Nobody really cares, right? But the attrition is what's happening over time, slowly. It's like a death by 1,000 cuts, and so the reason why I titled it this is because the stream this is because the hurricane is gonna suddenly cause a lot of problems, but all these problems have been and it's not an external force, right? It's not an external force. Like, it's not that Russia, China, Iran, and African, Asian countries all around the world that are upset at the United States are gonna like come into the United States and like, you know, drop one bomb or 10 bombs at a time in random parts of the United States. That's because the wars of attrition, that is how they function sometimes, right? But like, it's not an external force really. Although there are external forces in the world. The full scale, the attrition is the internally caused each bite, right, by the hookworm parasites that are inside of the United States, and not just them, but people that participate with them. It's the slow weathering down, the wearing out. It's just like it's a slow process. Like, it's just every day. It's kind of like getting older, you know. But then not having a replacement, you know. It's like, oh my gosh, you know, who is going to fix this roof when I'm not here because I didn't teach my spoiled. I have narcissistic personality disorder as a liberal boomer, and I was a helicopter parent, and now I didn't teach my 36 or 41 or 20 or 31, 32-year-old millennial child how to do literally anything, and I've never expected them to do literally anything. And I am too physically old to repair this roof, and I don't know who's going to repair it now. Who's going to who's going to put the 50-year lasting silicone or shave the rust off of this corrugated tin? Who's going to repair the roof when it starts to leak? Because I didn't teach my child, and they don't want to do anything because I have not prepared. That's also attrition, right? This is parental, generational, familial failure, right? I mean, I'm not saying that's because like millennials are spoiled, but there are people who have done that. Conversely, there's also people of the previous generation that are like, why hasn't, you know, why isn't my, you know, 41-year-old or 35-year-old well-adjusted child talking to me, right? You know, there's a lot of this, like we talk about like low contact, no contact, adult children cutting off from the parents. There's a lot of talk about this kind of stuff. I don't know if you've seen that, right? Why is this happening? What the trend of family members severing relationships? 27% of Americans were estranged from one or more family members. Large, like double-digit percentages of children are cutting off from the parents, right? Like it's one of two things that's happening. Either you have spoiled man, woman, children that don't know how to do anything, right? This is kind of this bifurcating trend. You have people that the boomer and Gen X generation, see, adult. There was this one article. Yeah, here's the one I was thinking about. Yeah. Why so many people are going no contact with their parents, right? A growing movement wants to destigmatize severing ties. Is it a much needed corrective or a worrisome change in family relations, right? This is actually interesting. There's several people, a lot of it has to do with COVID too. Parents and family members who don't take it seriously. And when you're a COVID conscious person, but family members aren't, that's a big people not having to explain to people and then have to like be very like in a gray rocking, literally sometimes, or like just completely business-like relationship. Like, I'm only going to tell you exactly the same thing I said last time, right? I'm not going to do an event, and we've had to do this too. We're not going to do an event that's unmasked in person because we simply do not want to get BSL level 3 pathogens, which 25% of people get catastrophic long COVID, which causes massive brain damage, organ damage, total body damage, chronic fatigue syndrome that is worse than getting cancer in terms of quality of life loss. And we simply are not going to risk that, and we're not going to risk our children with that, right? And parents, that's one reason parents and children are breaking apart, right? But it's also, and there's many other factors, like children who grew up in a conservative right-wing Christian community that was all about quote unquote traditional values, and then the child went through college, and now they're quote unquote liberal or socially. They don't believe in women being property of husbands. Now they've gone through college, etc., and that's another reason why people sever as well. But I mean, a big part of it also is that the adult children see that the United is part of this is part of the attrition, right? This is the failure. Their parents, right? Like, and I speak personally on this, but not just me. We see that our parents that are of the 40 to 70 or 45, 60, 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old American generations, they have failed their children in the sense that why is all of this climate change happening? Right? Why didn't you do anything to fix this? Why did you allow, right, the parasites and the termites to eat all of our collective civilizational house, to eat our roads, to eat our future jobs? Why did you just not take, why weren't you more serious when it came to the 2009 financial crisis? Rather than just telling us to go vote for a one-party, two-headed system, why didn't you do something more than this? Right? You said we were going to have great, prosperous lives and live the American dream, and that every generation of Americans would be better off than their parents. Right? You said that. Gen X and Boomers. Right? So the people because millennials have children already. Some millennials are grandparents. Again, I'm Zennial. Like, I was born in 83. I'm like right at the cutoff between Gen X and millennial. Many 41-year-olds already have grandkids. Right? So the millennial generation, which is the first generation to definitely not be living. We're poorer than our parents. We have less free time. The world is worse. I mean, the world, every situation, economically, climate wise, rise of racism, overt fascism, all this kind of stuff, wars, economic malfeasance. I mean, all these categories, everything has gotten worse, right? And what have the brunchers, right? What have the conservative and liberal brunchers done in that entire time? For the most part, with very few exceptions, like Jill Stein. You have your Jill Stein here, you have your you have your Ralph Nader there, but that's a tiny minority of people. What have most of it? So that itself, right? That itself is a self-inflicted wound of the United States and of the collective West, Canada, Europe, Australia, etc. Because they all have these same problems. You saw Korea, Japan as well. This is all a self-inflicted wound. Now your children, right, are cutting off from you. What does that do to the United States? And I've talked about this previously. In order for a country and a civilization to perpetuate itself, the copium is a lot of the talk about birth rates, but that's not really the issue. The issue is that number one, that's there's many ways to deal with that. Number two, we don't really you don't need X number of humans on the planet. The focus of Elon, liberal, conservative, and other media on birth rates is itself a attempt to dodge the real problem, which is that your children don't believe in the United States as a whole, like double-digit percentages. Young people over 70% hate all parties of the United States, all major parties of the United States, and all of the faith in all branches of government is absolutely at its lowest point it's ever been. And not just the faith in it, it's the belief in the American system, whatever that is, right? If you can even call it that, right? The disrooting, people would identify as a Palestinian supporter rather than an American. Most young people, right? Most young people would prefer to support like Black, Indigenous, and people of color over any kind of white American project, conservative or liberal. They just why there's no evidence. There's no evidence no real evidence, right, that they should do otherwise, right? Because what do we see that the United States is doing? It's doubling down on the most heinous crimes. Just yesterday, the United States and Europe, because it's not ISRAEL. This is all as Nasrallah correctly said, right? The ISRAEL is empowered by the United States, the Europeans, and that collective corporatocracy that runs all of the West, that gives the money and the weapons to commit the most heinous atrocities that we have had to watch while you were brunching, while you were eating your overpriced peasant served food at the Applebee's or that fancy hotel, right? The boomers and the Gen Xers who can still afford to go and not work and eat brunch, which is not all of them, but I mean, it's still a lot of them. While you were brunching, we were watching live stream children dying for the last year, right? That's like how do you come back? I mean, there's no evidence that the U.S. and the Europeans and Canada and Australia, New Zealand, Japan, and South Korea want to come back. I mean, a little bit in Asia, but they still have a lot of problems. But in the U.S. and Canada, certainly, and the West and Europe, there's no evidence that they want to even try to come back. They just want to keep telling young people that you're gonna end the world, and like insulting young people who they have screwed if you don't do exactly what they say, right? The people that have ruined the world, the boomer and Gen X American generations and Western as a generation, and the United States up and Western upper classes, middle and upper classes as a whole, if you don't do what we, the people who have burned this entire world, we who have failed to do anything significantly on climate change, we who went along, right, and lived it up and just partied during COVID, just went to all of the events and then died or got sick when other people were trying to take it seriously. We who you just spent all the oil, took all the plane trips, went shopping at Neiman Marcus and at the Gap, and then went the next day just to have fun during the consumerist heyday of Western liberal democratic hegemony and Mickey Mouse. You just went to Disney every time you could. When the younger generations were trying to save and do something for the planet, doing the harder, less fun but necessary work of trying to stop GENOCIDE, stop climate change, do something about the corruption, do something about this capitalist system. You were over there riding the tapeworm, right? And now you're telling us, if you don't vote for one of our two garbage tapeworms, how are we supposed to keep brunching? There is no. I mean, ultimately, we can't say exactly, but if this process continues, there is no future for the United States. In the West. There is none, and they don't really deserve it. I mean, as I said, there's a more of a probability there will be a federation of indigenous Lakota, Dakota, Anishinaabe nations than a United States in about 50 years, right? There won't be a Europe. There will be North Africa and West Arabic world. There will be West Russia and North Africa, and there will be the Greater Levant in what used to be Germany and France and Britain, because the people who identify as the West, and they have a legacy of this, right? These are the same people. I think even the president of Russia just said the West is historically, they were the ones who ate human flesh, and they accused people of color around the world of doing so. The West is a ball of vampires that will soon be gone, right? A vampire, like a termite, like a tapeworm, like a banker, like a liberal. This is basically this. They rely on the ability to pretend they have to be very good at hiding, and they also have, but they what they rely on is the sucking of others' lifeblood and energy, right? It's kind of like being told by your being told by your parent who is like actively, right, taking a plane and going and flying again, right, to Magic Mountain, or going to a $500 concert with their spoiled 35-year-old chosen child, right, who doesn't know how to do anything, right? Because that you have created adult man and woman children who don't know how to do anything. And then they're flying on a plane, and while they're telling you, you should really do something. Somebody should do something about these problems, right? Pretend like a vampire, right? Pretending like they did not cause these problems, right? While sucking your blood, because, right, if you're the one that's actually working, you're the one that's actually working a essential service, not working finance, insurance, or real estate, or marketing, or being a landlord. Like the average landlord is a boomer with 5 houses, or it's BlackRock or State Street. But the Western world that's what it is. It's 2,000 years of that, and it's certainly 500 years of that, right? And so I don't. I mean, obviously, maybe that will be turned around. But I mean, we don't see. I think one of my Pakistani friends, a Pakistani anti-imperialist that is doomed to live in this dying Western tumor called so-called Canada. She said the problem with Iran and China is they believe that there's some kind of moral, that beneath all of the lies and the horror and the violence and the stealing and the colonialism, Iran and China believe that there's some kind of moral goodness to be found there, right? And that's not true. There's only an infinite depth of moral bankruptcy. Kind of like the bank account of the United States, $35 trillion plus, right? Kind of like a zombie bank in 0809, right? Like Lehman Brothers, or the also zombie bank, Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, which were simply enabled, right? But the bank account, like the value of OpenAI, which Sam Altman, known American cyber criminal billionaire, said, if we can't use intellectual property of other people, artists, writers, creators, right, people creating, if we can't do digital shrimp Jesus creating generative AI vampirism, if we cannot exsanguinate all of the 2 and 3D animators on DeviantArt, if we can't take all of other people's skills and suck it into OpenAI Corporation, we cannot make money. We are not profitable. We are bankrupt. This is openly admitted by the CEO of the last great hope of the West, the biggest tech mega ever. Did you know that the Taiwanese actually said, the Taiwanese TSMC, Sam Altman said, it's going to cost $7 trillion to build 35 data centers. Let me see if I can find that. It was hilarious. They call the Taiwanese semiconductor company calls Sam Altman a podcast bro. He requested 36 fabrications, $7 trillion. $7 trillion. Where's the article for this? Yeah. He requested $7 trillion to make 36. Like these are TSMC is the world's, it was China, mainland China is not the biggest, but TSMC was the world's biggest fabrication. I mean, these are when you take semiconductors and they produce the microchips, right? That go into your phones, that go into cars, that go into laptops, right? So TSMC, right? That was who was doing it, right? It's like there's even a joke in a 1995 American movie Armageddon, right, where the Russian cosmonaut says to Bruce Willis, like, Russian parts, American parts, Chinese parts, all made in Taiwan. right? And at one point, it's 90% of all these important chips that we use in all our computers and devices was made in Taiwan. But and so and so and so and so the United States just came and they said he wanted to. He had an absurd request for 36 new chip making plants that would cost an astounding $7 trillion. The New York Times claims it discussed OpenAI's negotiations with 9 people close to the discussion. Who obviously, and Sam, his second in command is a rabid open ZIONIST, and so is he as well. All of Silicon Valley and the big techs are. NYT claims it discussed OpenAI's negotiations with 9 people close to discussions. So involving Asia's, he wanted to quote unquote progress AI involving Asia's manufacturing muscle, Middle Eastern money, and U.S. regulators. NYT sources say the scale of investment would be trillions, similar size to a quarter of the U.S. annual output. Recent OpenAI statements have rolled back such talk to mere hundreds of billions. However, it is reported that years of construction time would also be needed to satisfy OpenAI scaling plans. Moonshot for dreams at TSMC. Anyways, they said the chip making execs, TSMC execs found Altman's ideas absurd. And according to one of the New York Times sources, the chip making execs subsequently called Altman a podcasting bro. Even implementing a fraction of the OpenAI CEO's ideas will be incredibly risky, and the execs are said to have openly pondered. Anyways, getting back to my previous point, and what he said, right? He said that we are not profitable unless we can continue to use where is it? Okay. If we can't use other people's intellectual property, we cannot make money. We're not profitable. We're bankrupt, right? Now that's what I wanted to get to. But also that's just funny, the podcasting, bro. And so that is not sustainable. That is not, and also that is, again, that's vampirism, right? It's complete, like, it's colonialism. It's digital sci-fi BS colonialism, right? It's like, it's which colonial capitalism is basically the same system. It's mass stealing, it's mass plundering, and then lying, right? And then using military force and cops to beat up the people you stole from in the last resort. And that's why they're spending billions on cop cities, militarizing the police, and that's why they are constantly spending greater and greater military budgets, right? Because that the United States is just a continuation of the Western colonial capitalist system that predated it, right? It's a global structure that has vampires everywhere in the world. It has parasites, it has termites, it has Goldmans everywhere in the world. I mean, there's some in the Arab world. We know who they are. It's in a lot of them. It's in Saudi Arabia. It's the leaders of the Jordan and of Egypt, the countries that have not gotten directly involved to stop their brothers and sisters from being absolutely exterminated in Gaza and now in Lebanon. So and it's it's a planet-wide system, and but yeah. And so we don't see any changes in this, right? We don't see people, again, it's people that are openly identifying as American and proudly identifying as American as a part of the U.S. There are people in the U.S. who descended from Americans, but they're not like proudly identifying as American. The same thing in Europe. There's people that are doing the right thing in Europe. They're trying to stop a lot of these actions, but most of them did not openly identify. They're like, I am a African person in Britain. I'm a Lebanese person in Paris. Like, and as they say, like, Europe, UK, Britain, we didn't come to Britain, these displaced African people, because of colonialism and massive poverty in Africa or in Asia or in the Americas. Like we as I'm a Nigerian, but I didn't come to Britain. Britain came to Africa and displaced my family. And no, I'm not going to participate in your so-called great British culture. I'm not going to participate in your so-called great American culture, right? In Hawaii, the U.S. literally came to Hawaii. And what did they do here? Refer to my previous other streams and you can learn, right? But in short, we had the highest literacy rate in the world. We have world-class technology, high-speed, trained, functional, not falling apart, not privatized. We had not privatized world's first universal healthcare. And what did the U.S. do? It's the same thing. Destroyed all that system, privatized everything. And Hawaii went from basically the most advanced country in the world, the most successful. Also, we had racial equality. We had Asian and African citizens when the U.S. had slaves and chained the Chinese up to make the West Coast, and it continues to use them to serve all of their dim sum and noodles, right? While they plan the next war in the Pentagon or in New York, or plan the next Big Short in New York. They're eating Chinese noodles, right? And what in Hawaii we had full equality. So there's no, like when the money dries up, the people that call themselves Americans, call themselves U.S. and Westerners, the people that are doing that now, when the money dries up, like the same thing in Taiwan. Billions of dollars has to go to brainwash people to believe that separating in the DPP, to believe that becoming a liberal American-style capitalist democracy and separating from Taiwan, right? Billions of dollars goes to literally brainwash kids to do that, right? In Taiwan, in particular, like it's also similar in Hawaii. But once that money dries up to send money over there, the China is the world's largest economy, and in real terms, it's the future. It's their biggest trading partner. It isn't a threat. Doesn't want to destroy Taiwan. All the opportunity is not in the United States and in the West. It's in China, right? Once the billions of dollars, once the giant washing machine size boxes full of cash stops flowing over like so much hurricane storm surge into Taiwan to pay people to basically gaslight and brainwash and to program young Chinese kids to hate their own people in the DPP. And they have these youth movements. The National Endowment for Democracy is involved in this kind of stuff. Nancy Pelosi is directly involved. Once they run out of money to forcefully Americanize Chinese, Taiwanese young people, that's why China said we don't want a military, we don't want a violent reunification. If we have to, we will, because we know once the United States dies, there will be no money to sustain this propaganda, right? But right, and then Taiwan and the Taiwanese people are like, oh, obviously, the United States has a plan. The United States has a China 2027 war plan, which involves, and the U.S. has even said this, in a war between the U.S. and China, we, the United States, are going to launch missiles to blow up TSMC. The U.S. Democrat and Republican and Pentagon officials have all said that. We'll just blow up. We will blow up the crown jewel that supports, right, what we just talked about, right? What Sam Altman is trying to steal, right, with his tapeworm. We will just blow up the majority of your entire economy and the thing that you're actually really good at, which is making microchips and fabricating the digital technologies. We just blow it up. The U.S. even just said that, right? So it takes an immense amount of propaganda to convince people, but Taiwan is right next to China. But the thing is, all Western school, all Western media, all Western everything, not just The Economist and Intelligentsia at the New York Times and what's his name, Paul Krugman, that's his name, but everything is Taiwanese propaganda, and it's U.S. propaganda in Taiwan, but it's the U.S. propaganda in Turtle Island. When the money dries up to pay people to brainwash children, they're not going to be, they have to spend a lot of money to try to get women to be tradwives in this kind of patriarchal old way. They have to spend a lot of money to pay young people to do like TikTok thirst traps to get people to sign up for the U.S. military. The U.S. military is tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands short on their recruitment goals. As that money keeps drying up, right? Like I said previously, the hurricane, the three prongs of the hurricane are the military power, the financial power, and then the narrative power, or the informational lying brainwashing power, which is in the print, it's in the radio, it's in media, it's in social media, it's in tech, device ownership, where the information and the content comes from, right? And so the more money you have, you can spend that to disinform and brainwash people in the narrative power, and then you can use that money and the narrative. You can use narrative power to drum up military power by getting kids to sign up to do things that do commit the most horrible war crimes imaginable for billionaires. And then if with the money you can pay mercenaries and you can pay for the military to keep on doing, right? So each of the three prongs of the hurricane of empire, of this colonial capitalist empire, sustains each other. But as the money starts to run down, like a hurricane over land, it starts to run out of power. The disaster that is the collective West will start to lose the ability to pay military recruiters, right? As it loses military numbers, it can't keep taking resources out of the Middle East. It can't take coltan out of, and copper and cobalt and all the things you need for your vapes and for your semiconductors and Apple phones out of Sudan and Congo and everywhere else that it can't keep maintaining control. You can't keep massacring people in Haiti to keep the Haitians down as one of the most important historical resistances of the non-white world, and the white supremacy is all part of this against the U.S. and Western colonial powers. So that's the good news. The good news is that, of course, we can't, we can never say never. I mean, but as a stable political social entity, I don't think that I would not bet. I would be, like in The Big Short, where they take all this money, right? Like in The Big Short, where they take money and they bet. What a short means, short selling means, it's an inverse stock. So basically, like, if you own a share of Apple stock and Apple, the price of Apple stock, because Apple makes more revenue this year, they release a phone that can compete with Huawei, which they can't. In this hypothetical imaginary alternate future where Apple is capable of making an actual phone that can compete with Huawei and Chinese phones under socialism with Chinese characteristics, if Apple's stock price goes up, then you make money, right? That's relative to the amount that the stock went up. If you short a stock, so if you have a short position, or if you go short, right, or if you short sell Apple, that means if Apple loses money, so if billions of people boycott Apple phones because they don't want to be Motorola pager exploded by the ZIONIST that run Apple, and or people want to boycott Apple because of the horrible crimes against humanity committed to make Apple phones in Sudan, Congo, the complicity in the West Asia genocide, right? Then Apple stock goes down, right? So if you short Apple, then you make money. So I would be short the U.S. In fact, I am short the U.S. I'm betting on the U.S. going down, and I don't. And it's It's possible that it could come back, but I mean, as a non-balkanized, not civil warring itself to death entity, I don't think the United States will last very long. It will there will be history books and museums about the United States, I think, But as a political formation, it does not seem to it is not giving any like empirical evidence that it wants to last. I almost feel like, coming back to this, I almost feel like boomer and Gen Xers, somewhere deep down, right? Somewhere deep down beneath like complaining about Reaganomics but doing nothing. Somewhere beneath like, Janis Joplin lyrics, the Woodstock hippie, the Woodstock concert acid trip memories. Somewhere beneath, $3 million worth of houses, right, that they're renting out, and like how much money they can make from each house they're renting out to 20 broke Gen Zers, right? Somewhere deep in the boomer and Gen X psyche, there is a fanatic urge, right? They realize they're gonna go and they're gonna campaign when they're gonna get out of brunch, and then they're gonna call up all of their children and their nieces and nephews that are pissed off at them and tell them vote for Biden or vote for Trump, depending. But in their heart, they know that their system, not them personally, but the Democratic Party, the rules-based order, they know that their system deserves to die. They know they're vampires inside, but they can't really stake themselves. The United States, they kind of know. The United States is kind of asking to die by empowering and enabling everything it's doing in the Middle East and also in Europe by poking the bear this against all rationality in Russia, right? You're poking that which has defeated you constantly before and is more powerful than ever. I think the OG colonizers, this Western appendix, this Western cannibalistic, hygiene practice free source of planetary malice, I think it kind of wants to die. It kind of wants to kill itself. Like nobody like Baerbock, von der Leyen, Rishi Sunak, Boris Johnson, Macron, the European leaders, they won't say this out loud, right? But I feel like they kind of want to die. They want to be put out of the misery. I mean, as not them personally, they want to, maybe some of them personally, but as a Europe, as the colonialist, imperial, Occidental core, they kind of want to dissolve. They want to be, like termites being tented. They kind of just want to be flushed out of the house so that the young new generations will have a house to live in and not just a rotten, collapsing house that's not worth 1/10 of what they say it is, that they can use as collateral in a collateralized debt obligation in Wall Street, right? I think that they don't want to have a fake house for their grandchildren, right? They want their grandchildren to be rooted in like a not sick civilization. So that's why they're asking Putin to help them. Putin is the death doula. Putin and Xi Jinping and Khamenei are the death doulas to assist in the death of that which needs to die. It's actually a real thing. Because like when you're in midwifery, right? You need people that are a support system while you're giving birth, right? A doula is somebody who helps, because it's very intense, it's traumatic, it can be hard. It's like there's a lot of decisions that have to be made. You need help, right? But people also need help in dying. Systems need help to die, and there are entities that can assist with that. Obviously, I'm not saying that that is no implication of what kind of should be doing. Kind of should be done. That's all hyperbolic and just completely imaginary. And hopefully the United States doesn't give Storm Shadow long-range missiles into Ukraine and completely lose all of its sanity. But anyways, but I mean, because that's less attrition and more like just being blown to pieces very quickly. Because attrition implies a slow, right? It's actually better to have attrition than a very fast, swift death of the Western imperial system. Because if it's too fast, that's really the strategy. If you pay close attention, that is a strategy of the global majority. Because if it's too fast, it could be unnecessarily. It could spiral out of control too fast, right? It's like a controlled demolition, right? You don't want to just like put all the C4 you have into a building, right? You want to make sure that you place the C4 properly, go one floor at a time. You don't want the building, right? As the Twin Towers of the U.S. comes down, you don't want the 9/11 U.S. You don't want you to just hit other random buildings around it, right? As the World Trade former center of the United States comes down, like so many Beirut towers, right? That the West isn't mourning for, but is rather celebrating. As the World Trade Center comes down, you want to make sure that the falling huge slabs of concrete don't smash other buildings. You want to make sure that it doesn't cause a knock-on effect that topples like half the city with dominoed skyscrapers, right? Right. So you want to kind of like control the end as much as possible. I mean, I'm not saying that it's good that there's hurricanes, but I mean, ultimately, that's what's gonna happen. That's where I think it's headed. Now, of course, we could have some about face, but like I've said 3 times already, I don't see any evidence of it. I just talked to my family. I talked to my older family members. I don't see any evidence of them like changing at all. Not in any significant way. What my dad is listening to like Sam Altman podcasts. My dad is like listening to like Robert F. Kennedy freaking podcast now. Because his last name is Kennedy. Talk about your brainworms. He literally had like nematodes eating his freaking neocortex. Right? And like is that where we're at? I mean, because that's not a future. That's no future. It's just listening to the podcast, bro. Like the podcast, bro. Like Aristotle was a podcast, bro, too. All he did was, bloviate about how women being equal was a problem, and he invented hysteria, which is a way to get rid of women who wanted equality by declaring them clinically insane. So the Aristotle, Caesar, Conquistador, Lord Elgin, Euro American podcast bro complex. It's unrealistic, it's untenable, it's nonsense, and it just needs to. You have to kind of just like walk off diagonally and be like, okay, we're gonna go and do actual concrete things in the real world to save the freaking what remains of the planet, while you keep doing your Western podcast bro vampirism. Anyway, that is as good a place to end as anywhere. I hope that you do not suffer too badly from hurricanes. Please be careful. 1 gallon per day per person for 7 days of water is what you need. Don't forget canned goods like canned chili. You always get the Wolf brand or there's like the Wolf brand. You got your Denizens. You got your Nally's chili. You got your Great Value chili. You got your store-bought brand. You need some kind of porky beans. You got corned beef. You need canned goods for at least a week or two to outlast the death of the West. I'm sorry, the hurricane. It's gonna take a little bit more than 2 weeks. Batteries, flashlights, radio, battery operated radio, battery operated lights of some kind. Hand crank power source if you can get your hands on it. That's not officially part of the hurricane kit. And hope that you stay well during the full spectrum attrition that is inevitable, and stay safe during the hurricanes. that are coming and other disasters that are coming. Now it is the end of the stream. You can support us by direct support at ko-fi.com/silverspook. Oh, somebody just donated money. Thanks a lot for that. Thanks to McClellan for the support. Massively, very much appreciate. I think it's like a good amount as well. Thanks to McClellan for the generous donation. Thanks for watching. If you appreciate what we do here, consider giving us a donation of some kind, and we massively appreciate it to keep on doing the education that we are trying to do. You can also support us in ongoing fashion at patreon.com/neofeud. And here we have updates to various things we're working on, such as finishing Neofeud 2. I am very close to being done. I'm working on the ending right now. I'm working on the ending of the game. I'm not quite at the voice acting cast call yet. I wish I was, but I'm not quite there. But I'm finishing the ending. And if you want to support what we're doing here and restoring ecology, part of maintaining and stopping climate change and other disasters from being as bad as they could be, having more green in your area, having more plants and strong ecology in your area, it increases the rainfall, which reduces desertification, it reduces the total flooding, and actually having too much concretization and poor drainage due to land mismanagement and lack of regreening that can cause more flooding, and also increases your robustness so that black swan events, like, I don't know, heat, weather, or cold events are less likely to take you out as supply chains have problems. So consider supporting us to keep doing that land back here in Hawaii and of land restoration, as well as finishing Neofeud 2. And of course, you get access to behind the scenes of what we're working on, the Silver Spook Discord and Silver Spook University. Silver Spook University is all the content I've ever produced categorized according to topics such as history, Africa, Asia, the U.S. focus, economics, true economics, race and gender focused, dismantling of the imperial analysis of the West, artificial intelligence, social media, digital, Death Star versus the Life Star, discussion of the future from indigenous perspectives, cyberpunk and sci-fi, and that's like my specialty, obviously, and lots of international panels of all kinds. And if you would like, it's basically, it's not a literal university in the sense of I can't give you a degree in underwater basket weaving or electrical engineering or post-structural anthropology or whatever they give degrees for nowadays. But you can learn a lot of things that you need to know, and I think that you need to know when you become a Silver Spook patron at any level. And it's basically, it's like a lot of it's on this channel, but it's just, this is a bit more organized, a little bit more organized, not perfect. But that's the best that we can do under our circumstances. You can get Neofeud, which is an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist cyberpunk adventure game about a cyborg social worker, a ex-con drug dealer turned revolutionary, and a ex-trillionaire ex-princess trying to take down levitating palace at Versailles, super rich, greedy ding-dongs. And also there's hippie terminators. There are unplugged Matrix agents named Che, and cyborg Bruce Willis wannabes, and John Connor lookalikes, and all kind of fun 80s and 90s and noughties references of all kinds that you may enjoy or you may not. But if you like the game, consider giving us a review at the Silver Spook on Steam. It really helps us to get the game discovered in the algorithm, and every sale, of course, supports everything that we do here at the Silver Spook Cooperative, as I spent 2.5 years working on that game, and I'm spent 7 years working on the sequel. So you can also get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Mac and for Linux. If you don't want to get Steam installed on your computer, it's standalone. Zero generative AI. No artists or writers were hurt in the making of this game. Zero gen AI game. This is made before AI was even out, but Neofeud 2 is also zero AI, no AI game. You can also get, unlike Wizards of the Coast, unlike so many game companies now that are all going full gen AI, You can also get Decolonators and several other games on the Silver Spook itch.io site. Women is a book by Holly, who is raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity and critiques right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity in a book that is Mary's perspective from the Bible, and it's also free, or you can support us by donating some money when you pick it up. You can also get follow at Silver Spook Games at wandering.shop. You cannot follow me on Forbes. You can follow at Silver Spook Games at wandering.shop. And you can also follow at Silver Spook Games at mastodon.social on Mastodon. On Twitter, you can follow at Silver Spook Guy and at Silver Spook Games minus the E and Silver for the games related stuff. And we're also on Blue Sky, and we're on Blue Sky, as well as Facebook, Instagram, etc., etc. And Terminator Cyberstar is a cyberpunk RPG that I'm the content director and the lead writer for, and that it's also set in the world of Neofeud 2 and Neofeud 1 as well. Holly is allergic to blue, headphones in, music on, writer, producer, moderator here, married to myself, land back, free, Hawaii, and of course, wearing masks because guess what? We're still in the middle of multiple pandemics, so please do that and help us keep all of us safe. Yes. And of course, thank you to all of these cool people on the Patreon list. Without your support, it does become very hard for us to keep doing this work. So thank you so much for your ongoing support. And yes. Anyways, until next time, don't forget, keep your mirror stage polished, be excellent to each other. Be careful. Be careful for this difficult weather that we're in. Recover yourself from the unrecoverable failure of the U.S. and let us now end this stream. What am I even doing right now? Okay. Until next time, keep your message polished and be excellent to each other. And have a good night. I lost the stop streaming button. That's what I'm doing. I'm losing where